So for me, like many Marymount girls, I left Marymount convinced and empowered to challenge, shape, and change the world. And in my case, that really led me to find my calling within education. First, as a teacher, I taught middle school English in rural Louisiana right after Katrina, and later as the director of curriculum instruction for an 11-school charter network. And within that role, I really had an incredible opportunity to study what makes schools excellent. And so we looked at schools across the nation and across the world, charter schools, public schools, boarding schools, and independent schools, including Marymount. And so that brought me back to Marymount time and time again. And each time I returned, I felt this tug. And though I had really planned to live in Louisiana, I married one of my co-teachers and a fellow educator. We had built a life there. I had built a career there. There was this feeling that a big part of my heart was back in New York. And that was really Marymount. And so ultimately that love rang out and won. And I returned 9 years ago as director of development. I had the opportunity to work on the capital campaign that built this campus, later as director of admissions, which was my favorite role. So I'm very glad to be back this morning in admissions in a small way. And then 2 years ago, when our head of school, long-term head of school, announced that she would be retiring, I really saw that Marymount was at an inflection point. I had seen in schools and institutions how a change in leadership like that could really impact culture and community. And I loved ours so dearly and really see myself in this role as a steward of those values, of that community, and those traditions, and it had a deep desire to really carry those forward. And at the same time, I was so excited about what comes next for Marymount and what it would mean to really take that mission and ensure that we continue to deliver on raising women who are ethical leaders, who are going to go out into the world prepared to challenge, shape, and change it. And that's really where I see my role as a steward of our traditions and a torchbearer of what comes next.
Your roots at Marymount run very deep, as you all can hear, but you left out one very important hat that you wear here at Marymount, which is that of a Marymount parent. And I'm wondering how that has shaped your perspective.
I guess I do wear many hats.
They all look good.
Oh, thank you. Certainly as a parent, in each of these cases, I think the different lenses that I have brought with me to Marymount give me a deeper understanding and an appreciation of really how we operate as a school, both in our values and in our intentionality. And being a parent has really honed that particularly so. So I have two daughters. My daughter, Amelia, who goes by Mimi, is in class 2, and my youngest, Margot, just started nursery. So she's in the very early weeks of her Marymount career. And as a parent, we certainly came into the admissions process a bit biased. Certainly, because I had known as a student and as an administrator, the love and the depth of really content expertise and instructional expertise that our faculty and our divisional heads bring to their role. And yet, I've been struck by the number of times that I'm rendered speechless, seeing the impact firsthand on my daughters as a parent. And I think about the very first time I read Mimi's progress report, and I wept, and then I looked across my kitchen and my husband was crying, and we do that often. But to us, we were each so touched by how acutely our teachers knew Mimi and could articulate her strengths as we had seen them, areas of growth and opportunities for her as a learner that we hadn't even scratched the surface of, and her quirks, right? They knew that she was convinced rainbow was a color and that she likes to wear 2 different socks to school. And there are these tiny moments and aspects of her character and her personality that they also saw. And their love of her at every step of her journey so far at Marymount, and Margot's too, has been so abundant. And you can see as a parent that they feel that love and it lights them up. and continues to. And so when they look at school, I mean, we take the bus down Fifth Avenue in the morning and they see the green roofs and suddenly they start shouting, it's Marymount, green roofs, we're almost there. Because they can't wait to be in school. And I think as a parent, seeing them thriving academically, socially, emotionally, and being so in love with school, it's the greatest gift I could ask for.
You really focused in on how Marymount has embraced your daughters, but how has the Marymount community embraced you as a parent?
The Marymount parents, those are my people. That's my village. Very much, when you go through this process, you are looking for a school for your daughter. I think you're also really looking for a community and I would say a family of choice. And for me, that is certainly what I found at Marymount and what my husband has found. We are an all-in parent community. I mean, you will see it in ways writ large, particularly this year with the centennial. So at the beginning of the year, we had parent volunteers, over 100 of them actually, who came together and staged a carnival for our homecoming. So they turned this building into everything that you would see at a carnival. It was incredible. We had 1,500 lions from nursery through class 12 here with school spirit, and it was all made possible for parents. And you see them show up by the hundreds for service Saturdays and be involved in projects like Grassroots, particularly now at a time where many in our city are experiencing food insecurity. And you also see it, I would say, in ways that are smaller, but particularly profound. Earlier this year, we lost a parent in class 1, and to see how her fellow classmates rallied in that moment to support that family in every way. I mean, down to helping choose a Halloween costume. I think it just speaks to these moments of connection, these understanding that when you join this community, you join it fully. And there are these moments really, as a parent, I was struck watching that and just felt that within life, you can't always predict, right, what will come. And there are challenges and hiccups, and knowing that you can face that in a community that will be there for you, will be there for your child, is something that I'm incredibly proud of, and I'm also immensely grateful for.
I think you said that so well. There's no other community that you want by your side in the good and in the challenging. And I think a lot of that is that there are a set of shared values that we all, like you said, we buy in wholeheartedly. And so I wanted to give a little bit more context as to where these values come from. Marymount was founded in 1926 by Mother Marie Joseph Butler, who is a religious of the Sacred Heart of Mary, or as you will hear us refer to them, the RSHM. And they set forth a set of values that we as a school and our sister schools across the globe are really anchored in. And so I was wondering, Lorraine, if you could share a little bit more about these values and then what they mean for our school.
This is a tough one because each of these values is so intertwined and I think so interwoven with how we operate at Marymount and lived experience of each of our students. If I had to really focus on one though, I think what is most core is actually the RSHM's mission, their key tenet, which is that all may have life and have it fully. And we see this really as the crux of how we see our role as educators, and that we are educating not only minds, but also hearts. It's looking holistically at each child, and it comes from that understanding of their dignity and seeing and helping them reach their utmost potential. And I think that shapes so much of really our approach as educators. And we speak about that tenet that all may have life and have it fully, often at Marymount, and it's so important. And when you get to the heart of it, why it matters simply because mattering matters. And research shows that students who feel that they themselves are valued, that they are inherently seen, known, loved, that they are much more well-rounded, that they're successful academically, and that they're successful socially. It really is that meta need, that understanding that you are valued and that you add value to a community, that sense of belonging, and that is inherently what we do at Marymount, and it derives from that mission of the RSHM.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about faith at Marymount and what that looks like for our students.
It's so central to who we are and really what we do here at Marymount. We see ourselves as educators as your partner, first and foremost, in raising good women who will go out and who will change the world. And that is our key central mission. And we're guided really by our Catholic faith in doing so. Our Catholic faith tradition, and particularly that of the RSHM, and we spoke about a few of those values, which really themselves derive from Catholic social justice teaching. And for those of you who aren't as familiar, again, it's really rooted in seeing the inherent dignity in one another, in building empathy, and seeing ourselves as leaders who serve and leaders who live a faith in action. And so our religious studies curriculum really focuses on those tenets. It really inspires and awakens a consciousness of social justice in our students, an understanding that they have a voice and talents and that they can be advocates for those in need, and that they are empowered to do so. And I think that's a huge piece of how we really approach living our faith at Marymount. I'd also say that we are proudly Catholic. We celebrate sacraments, we attend masses, and we are proudly inclusively Catholic. And so we welcome and celebrate families and students of all faith traditions. We welcome and celebrate families of different family structures. And that is also a way that we live our mission. You know, we recognize that a student's spiritual and faith journey is uniquely personal. And we really walk with each of our students as they build their moral compass, as they determine, you know, their sense of their purpose and identity and connection to our mission. And it becomes, you know, and I've seen this both firsthand and kind of looking out to the generations of Marymount students, faith really becomes an anchor in their lives. One of my favorite books is The Science of Religion, and it's a psychologist's study of the impact of religion and a shared sacredness. And really the power of that coming in building a community and an anchor. And that's really what I think Faith at Marymount creates for students. It's a lens of seeing the world with shared values. It's opportunity for coming together as a community. And it allows each of them to also see that they are a small part of something greater. And so it reinforces that idea of inherent worth, inherent goodness, and connectivity, which is so powerful in a world where there is so much polarization, where students, and particularly girls, can feel so much pressure to really be able to anchor to something deeper and more profound.
As we mentioned, we at Marymount educate the heart and the mind, and we went a little deep on the heart to start off this morning. So we'll switch gears and focus in on what does it mean to educate the mind at Marymount. So Lorraine, I was wondering if you could describe Marymount's pedagogy.
As a curriculum nerd, I can go on for a while, so
We don't have all day.
okay. So cut me off when you need to. I would say at the heart, when we think about learning at Marymount, we think of joyful rigor. We want our students to very much live that value of becoming lifelong learners. And so we see it as our job of instilling that level of learning. And we do that really through pedagogy that is student-centered. And what that means is that we look at the ways that students, but particularly girls, learn best. And we know that girls are highly motivated when they are the drivers of their own learning, when they have agency and they have choice in what they're learning. We know that girls are relational learners, and so they seek opportunities for collaboration, and within that, they seek opportunities for leadership amongst their peers. And lastly, girls are inherently meaning makers. And so they are naturally looking for opportunities and reasons to connect to the why of what they're learning, whether that is cross-curricularly or in terms of real life, real world impact. And so when we approach our teaching just that way, in providing opportunities for girls that encourage them to become critical thinkers, to work and lead collaboratively, and to find meaning and make meaning across content.
So I'm hearing student-driven, inquiry-based, and joyful.
You're a good student, Meg.
Thank you so much. This is a beautiful picture of how our students learn while they're at Marymount. But I'm wondering if we can get into what are they learning? Can you talk about our curriculum?
Very much so. When I think of Marymount's curriculum, really two words come to mind, and it's tradition and innovation. And I know those can seem in contrast, but I think at Marymount, we marry the two exceptionally well. And when I speak about tradition and what I mean of tradition in curriculum, it's an emphasis really on the foundational skills. We know that students, whether they're in nursery or starting in 9th grade, need to be exceptionally well-versed in literacy and numeracy. We see that very much as the foundation, the bedrock of all critical thinking. And so we provide students a really deep and well-rounded traditional education in that sense. We also very much value the traditional importance of public speaking. We want each of our students to be critical thinkers who can engage with differing viewpoints and to then confidently, and compellingly be able to communicate their understanding and their ideas. And so you'll see woven throughout our curriculum, beginning in lower school, very intentionally courses around speech and drama. And why we combine the two, giving students opportunities for speech, debate, but also performing arts, is because we see it as such an important part of developing a girl's voice and developing her confidence. And so we marry that through cross-curricular projects, again, coming back to that joyful student-centered approach, but really encourage students to represent their learning in multiple ways, and a real infusion of the performing arts in that. And you see girls gravitate toward that with a sense of joy, with a sense of openness to exploring, and ultimately really develop a very strong voice, which then leads to the innovation piece of our curriculum. And I think we are a school that, teaching and learning front, never rests on our laurels. It is very much our responsibility to ensure that our girls are prepared for what the world needs and what they will face in terms of college and career and beyond. And so when we look at different aspects of our curriculum, we're particularly focused on opportunities for girls to have deep learning experiences, particularly in areas where women are underrepresented. And so two areas that I think really touch on that is our approach to science and research and our approach to financial literacy. An upper school course called Independent Science Research is one of several opportunities we have for independent study, for girls to really learn, take their learning and own it. And in ISR, they have 3 years to develop their own research. They are mentored by a Marymount faculty member as well as a researcher in the field. And it's incredible to see the results of 3 years of self-driven learning. And I'm looking at some of the senior projects, and one in particular, when I think of Ailish, she started as a sophomore, and she had an interest in breast cancer early detection methods. And so she had spent her first year developing a research paper around that through her Marymount mentor, actually used that and leveraged it to gain a very competitive internship in a lab at Hunter College, where she was one of the only high school students, she was one of 2 in a lab of 20, to work on emerging antibody treatments of advanced breast cancer. And so through that work, she has co-published, she's presented city and nationally, and she's seen, most importantly, that she is a scientist and a woman, and that is a place where she belongs. And I think that is incredibly powerful piece of it. Similarly, when we look at the addition to our curriculum we made 5 years ago, which was an investment really in building in financial literacy, it was with that same lens, right? That we believe that to be fully empowered women, our girls need to understand how finances work. And so at the middle school level, we focus a lot on personal financial literacy, and there are project-based learning opportunities for students to explore that. And as they become older, through a partnership with Bloomberg, we offer a Bloomberg Market Concepts course. And again, it really allows our students to see and understand that they can be leaders in any field that they choose, that there are no barriers of access, and that they belong in those spaces. And so as we think really of what comes next, we continue to innovate. And for us, and as educators, that next forefront, of course, is AI.
You're just gonna leave us there with that cliffhanger? I think we need to talk a little bit about AI. It is transforming the way that we work, the way that our students learn, the way that our teachers educate. Can you speak to how Marymount is grappling with this new technology?
The AI question.
Yeah.
I knew I was gonna, had a feeling I'd get this. Marymount, like every educational institution right now, is really at a critical juncture when it comes to artificial intelligence and what that means for teaching and learning. And I really encourage us to look at AI courageously in both its concerns and its challenges, but also its opportunities. Because quite frankly, it is and will continue to change the way that our daughters will learn, the way that they'll work, and the way that we'll live. And so we must do that, right? We have a responsibility to engage with it. And I want to temper that by saying, I believe fully that education is a human endeavor, that connection, that mattering that I spoke about, that happens between a teacher and a student can't be replaced by a chatbot. It can't be replaced by a 2-hour platform. It's inherently human. And that will always be a piece of education. And I think AI offers the opportunity to really complement that relationship and that connection in fascinating ways, particularly relating to being able to personalize instruction. And that's really where I've seen our faculty start to go with AI. For example, we have one of our upper school English faculty members who's working through a research grant with International Coalition of Girls Schools, and she has designed her own chat bot for writing. And so she has downloaded Marymount rubrics and hundreds of essays where she has given feedback to students, and she has designed Cece, who is her complimentary writing coach. And now each of our students can go home essentially with their writing teacher who understands what it is that we're looking for, like Marymount's Bar of Excellence in Writing, the way in which we approach coaching students, not replacing that work for them, but giving them another tool that aids in their learning. And so I'm very excited to see how we continue to sort of push AI and its implementation in that direction. We've started a faculty and a parent focus group around AI to think through what are other ways that we hope to integrate it. And ultimately, we really see it as, again, our responsibility to make sure that each of our students understands AI, that they understand the boundary of it, how to use it safely, developmentally appropriately, purposefully, and that ultimately that they'll be able to use it as leaders in their fields.
So we have covered how we educate the heart and the mind, how Marymount really strikes that beautiful balance of supporting our girls in a nurturing environment while also asking them to stretch and challenge themselves and grow academically. We have time for one final question. When you think about launching our graduates out into the world, what do you hope they carry with them from their Marymount experience?
I really love that you've used that word launch, because that's very much how I think about each of our classes when they graduate, is that we're launching our students into the world. I think we're also launching hope into the world. And one of the things that I hope most for each of our girls is that they see themselves as the living embodiment of our mission, that they leave this school empowered to challenge, shape, and change that world and to be leaders in it because the world needs them. And it's so heartening to see, what a Marymount girl does when she leaves. And I look at our alumni just across generations, and they're the CEO of Big Sisters, Big Brothers. They're the magistrate judge in Eastern Court District. They're the chief of staff of the Foreign Relations Committee. They're a pediatric hematologist running one of the largest clinics in Haiti for sickle cell. It's vast, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about what we do here is that in recognizing inherently who each of our students is, we empower them to find their unique gifts, to find their passions that really light them up, and to go pursue those toward good. And our alumni are doing just that. And I say that in launching them, that I also hope each of our students knows that they can always come home. You know, Marymount for me has been such an anchor. It continues to be such an anchor for our alumni, whether they're in class of 1950 to class of 2024. We just had an alumni gathering, and that was the age split. And to see the multi-generational sisterhood, that sense of coming home, it is quite rare in this world to have such a place of permanence outside your family. And I think that is beautiful and powerful. And so I very much hope that girls understand that that sisterhood, that those connections to their faculty members, that this sense of Marymount as home is enduring.
We're launching hope and inviting everyone to come back home. I think that's a really wonderful place for us to end today. Thank you, Lorraine, for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us, and we hope you leave with a deeper sense of Marymount and of our community, and we look forward to seeing you again soon as part of this process. Have a great rest of your morning. Stay warm out there.